Okay, so get this. We're diving into this fictional podcast,
Okay.
and the podcast is about a blockbuster movie,
Uh-huh.
and the movie's all about land management.
Now, that's a premise I wouldn't have bet on,
Right.
but it's really interesting. What's fascinating here is how this fictional podcast, hosted by these characters, Sam and Jess,
Yeah.
they take something like land management, something that seems so mundane, and spin into this, hilarious action flick.
Right.
And it really makes you think about, how humor can just pop up in the most unexpected places.
Exactly. You wouldn't think soil pH tests and land auctions could be
Yeah.
edge of your seat material, but these guys make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
So they've got this main character, Bob the Landman, and he is so obsessed with soil.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we're talking nail-biting soil tests
I
here.
love that.
Yeah.
So it's like that classic exaggeration, right?
Yeah.
Where they take something so ordinary and blow it completely out of proportion, and that's where that humor comes in. It reminds me of those over-the-top documentaries that poke fun at those, niche hobbies, but in doing so, they kind of reveal something insightful about the people and their passions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And speaking of passionate, we got to talk about the villain of this movie, Mr. Cement.
Oh, Mr. Cement.
He's like the ultimate stereotype of like a developer who just wants to pave over everything, and his big evil plan is to turn this beautiful natural area into a giant parking lot.
Classic. It's that classic,
Yeah.
man versus nature conflict, right?
Totally.
So Mr. Cement represents that tension that we see in the real world between, development
Right.
and conservation. You see it all the time, especially with urban sprawl, where cities are expanding outwards and they're consuming, natural habitats but by making the villain so over the top, it kind of makes you think about these issues, but in a new light. It's like they're sneaking in some social commentary.
Right.
Yeah.
Without being preachy about it.
Totally. And then there's the sidekick in this movie.
Okay.
Who is this quirky botanist
Oh,
full of ridiculous advice?
Like what?
Well, for instance, they suggest using chamomile tea to keep wildlife away.
Chamomile tea. Wow.
I know.
That's amazing. Well, the botanist adds that, layer of absurdity that keeps the humor going. But it does touch on a real issue too, right?
Yeah.
Managing wildlife in a way that benefits both people and the environment.
Right.
But of course, chamomile tea isn't going to cut it in the real world.
No.
You need a much more comprehensive approach, taking into account things like habitat restoration, wildlife corridors, and responsible land use planning.
Right. So it seems like they're having a lot of fun with this, but they are kind of bringing in some real world stuff.
Yeah.
Too, which is cool.
Yeah.
But, okay, you ready for the real star of the show?
Okay, lay it on me.
A rare snail.
That only lives in a very specific type of soil, and this little snail becomes the unexpected hero of the whole movie.
Oh, that's a brilliant choice, using a snail as the hero.
I know.
I mean, you usually think of snails as so slow and insignificant.
Right.
But here, it represents the, fragility of an ecosystem.
Yeah.
It becomes a symbol of what's at stake
Uh,
if we don't take care of the environment.
Totally. And Sam and Jess, the hosts of this podcast, they even joke about Landman inspiring a whole fan club
Oh, really?
called Snail Supporters Unite,
I love it.
with T-shirts and snail plushies.
That's hilarious. Well, it makes you wonder what other unlikely creatures could become mascots for environmental causes.
Right.
I mean, that taps into this broader trend of fandom culture where people are rallying around the most unexpected things.
Yeah.
It just shows you how even a fictional movie can spark this real passion and activism.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the part that I think is really funny. There's this big dramatic scene, like a land auction scene, right?
Yeah.
And Bob accidentally bids on his own property.
Oh no, that's pure comedic gold.
I know.
You'd expect a landman to be an expert bidder.
Right.
But by having him make this blunder, it undercuts all those expectations.
Yeah.
And it creates this hilarious moment of oh, wait, what just happened?
Exactly. It's just classic slapstick.
Yeah.
But it also kind of makes you think about how, even the most, experienced professionals can have those oops moments.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that humor often comes from the most unexpected places.
Right.
You never know where you'll find it.
And then Sam and Jess, they have this hilarious idea that Landman could, kickstart a whole new genre of land management action flicks.
I love it. What would they be called?
Well, They even brainstormed some titles like The Fast and the Furious, Land Management Edition,
Oh my God.
and Fasten Your Seatbelts for Soil.
That's brilliant. It's like that juxtaposition of like high octane action
Right.
with the world of, land management, which is typically
Yeah.
kind of, let's face it, somewhat dry.
Yeah.
It's like, could you imagine Vin Diesel drifting a tractor through a field, trying to outrun Mr. Cement's bulldozers?
Oh my gosh, I would totally watch that.
Right.
But on a serious note, it does kind of make you think, like, could this genre-bending thing actually work?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, are there other examples of, seemingly mundane topics
Right.
being transformed into, like, successful movie genres?
Well, I mean, think about mockumentaries.
Uh-huh.
Like, This is Spinal Tap or Waiting for Guffman.
Right.
They take these very specific,
Yeah.
often overlooked subcultures and turn them into these hilarious but also insightful stories.
Right.
So why not land management?
Yeah.
I think there's definitely potential there.
Okay, so just to recap, we've got nail-biting soil tests.
Yeah.
A cement-obsessed villain.
Yep.
A chamomile tea-loving botanist. a heroic snail.
Love it.
And a land auction gone hilariously wrong.
It sounds amazing.
It does sound like a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
But is there more to Landman than just silly jokes? Like, could this fictional movie actually be a clever way to get people thinking about environmental issues?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
By exaggerating these land management issues to such a ridiculous degree, Landman might actually make people more aware of these real-world concerns.
So it's like they're using humor as a Trojan horse for environmental awareness.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
And sometimes that's the most effective way to reach people because, let's be honest, lectures and dry facts don't always stick.
Right.
A good laugh that can stay with you, it can open your mind to new ideas, and it can even help you remember information better.
So while Landman might seem absurd on the surface, there could be a deeper message at play. It's like they're saying, hey, even land management can be exciting and important.
Right, and who knows, maybe this fictional movie could inspire some real-life action.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it'll get people talking about these issues, supporting conservation efforts, or even just looking at their own backyards with a newfound appreciation for the soil beneath their feet.
That would be amazing. And, it's really making me think about all those seemingly mundane fields out there.
Right.
Just waiting for their moment in the comedic spotlight.
Oh, absolutely. I bet we could come up with some hilarious movie ideas.
Yeah.
Based on the most unexpected topics.
All right, let's brainstorm.
Okay.
But first, let's take a quick break.
Sounds good.
And we'll come back to this because I'm already feeling inspired.
All right. So where were we?
We were going to brainstorm some movie ideas.
Oh, yes. Okay, so what about a Mission Impossible movie?
Okay.
But instead of, Tom Cruise, like, breaking into some high-security vault, he has to infiltrate Mr. Cement's headquarters and reprogram his, like, concrete mixer to produce eco-friendly building materials.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
So I can see it now, Tom Cruise hanging off the side of this giant cement mixer, rewiring it with just seconds to spare before it, like, spews out a batch of eco-concrete.
Instead of explosions, we could have, like, wildflowers bursting out of the concrete.
Yes, exactly. It'd be a visual spectacle with a positive environmental message.
Okay, that's one for the list.
All right, what else? What about a rom-com?
Okay.
But it's set in the world of competitive composting.
Competitive composting?
Yeah, two rival composters who fall in love amidst the piles of decomposing food scraps.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad it's good.
I know, right? We could call it, like, Love and Compost or something.
I love it.
And you could have all these hilarious scenes with them trying to outdo each other with their compost recipes, fighting over the best worms.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe even sabotaging each other's compost bins.
And their love for composting would ultimately bring them together.
Of course, despite their differences.
Okay, Love and Compost is definitely a contender.
Okay, I like it, but all these hilarious ideas are really pointing to something bigger.
Oh, what's that?
It's about the power of storytelling to make even the most unexpected topics engaging and entertaining.
Right. We've been talking about this, like, fictional podcast and Landman.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. And you see it all the time in documentaries, books, even stand-up comedy.
Absolutely.
People finding humor in the everyday and using it to connect with audiences in a meaningful way.
Exactly. Think about, like, documentaries like Jiro Dreams of Sushi or
Uh-huh.
Free Solo. They take these seemingly niche subjects,
Yeah.
sushi making, rock climbing, and turn them into these like gripping emotional stories
Right.
that captivate audiences worldwide.
And it's not just documentaries.
No.
Books like The Martian or The Soul of an Octopus,
Yes.
they use storytelling to make science and nature come alive.
It's all about finding that human connection, that emotional core.
Yeah.
That makes people sit up and pay attention.
And humor is a powerful tool for doing that.
Absolutely.
It disarms you.
Uh-huh.
It makes you more open to new ideas.
Right.
And it can even help you remember information better.
That's so true.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, I think it's a challenge to look at your own life,
Yeah.
your own work, your passions, your hobbies, and ask yourself,
Yeah.
where's the humor here?
Yeah.
Because chances are it's there, just waiting to be discovered.
I love that.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to turn it into the next Landman.
Oh, wow.
The next viral sensation that gets everyone talking about, say, I don't know, the fascinating world of actuarial science or the
Yes.
surprisingly hilarious adventures of a plumber.
I love that. So we've talked about the comedic potential of Landman,
Uh-huh.
the power of storytelling to make unexpected topics engaging, and now we're challenging you, the listener,
Right.
to find the humor in your own corner of the world.
It-
But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The idea of using humor to raise awareness
Uh-huh.
about important issues.
Yeah.
Like we talked about how Landman could potentially raise awareness about environmental concerns.
Right.
But how effective can humor really be in driving social change?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that humor alone isn't going to solve complex problems
Right.
like climate change or social injustice.
Yeah.
But it can be a valuable tool for starting conversations, challenging assumptions, and just making those issues more accessible to a wider audience.
So it's like using humor to open the door
Yeah.
to those bigger conversations.
Exactly. Think about comedians like Jon Stewart or Trevor Noah.
Right.
They use humor to tackle serious political and social issues, making people laugh, but also encouraging them to think critically about the world around them.
You see it in satirical news shows like The Daily Show
Yeah.
or Last Week Tonight with John Oliver.
Exactly. They use humor to expose hypocrisy, highlight injustices, and even inspire viewers to take action.
Even though they're making you laugh,
Uh-huh.
they're also informing you, making you question things.
Right. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But when it's done well, humor can be incredibly effective in sparking social change.
So it's not just about making people laugh.
No.
It's about using that laughter
Yeah.
to create a space for dialogue,
Yes.
reflection, and potentially even action.
I think that's something that Landman, even though it's fictional,
Yeah.
really gets right. It's not just a silly movie about land management. It's a way to engage with environmental themes
Oh.
in a way that's fun, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit subversive.
And that's something we can all learn from,
Absolutely.
no matter what field we're in or what issues we care about.
Right.
Sometimes a little bit of humor can go a long way in making a difference.
Because at the end of the day, we're all human, and we respond to stories that make us laugh, make us think, and make us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the comedic potential of Landman, to the power of storytelling, to the role of humor in driving social change. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought. So think about your own area of expertise,
All right.
no matter how technical or niche it might seem.
Yeah.
Like, what are the hidden gems of humor just waiting to be unearthed?
I bet you could find comedic potential in anything, from the intricacies of tax code to
Really?
the inner workings of a smartphone.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, imagine a courtroom drama
Okay.
and the lawyers are arguing over, like, the interpretation of a comma in the tax code.
Yes.
And the fate of a fortune hangs in the balance.
I'll love it.
Or a sci-fi thriller about a rogue AI that, like, lives inside a smartphone
Oh, wow.
and it starts manipulating its owner's life.
That's a good one.
You're totally getting me excited about all these possibilities.
Yeah.
It's like every field has its own set of quirks and challenges
Right.
and absurd moments
Uh-huh.
that are just begging to be explored through humor.
It's all about finding that unique